Last video, I made a claim. One Space Marine is worth 12 soldiers. Someone in the comments disagreed, specifically this person, and I'll read it exactly. You wouldn't do all that work and kill all those people to create a warrior equivalent to only 12 humans. 17 people agreed. 4 argued back. The top reply counter-argument got 6 likes. The Imperium kills more people just to take out the bins. A third voice came in with 4 likes. Billions in one city. Life is worthless. Nobody ran the numbers. This video is the numbers. We're doing a full cost versus output audit, rank by rank, tier by tier, from the first aspirant who walks into a Space Marine trial to the chapter master commanding a fleet from his fortress-monastery. At each tier, we'll ask the same question. What went in, what came out, and does the output justify the input? We'll treat both sides of that comment thread as genuine intellectual positions rather than strawmen, and then we'll deliver a verdict. The verdict won't be what either side expects. But before we open the ledger, we need to deal with a problem so fundamental it should have ended the original debate before it started. The 12 men figure, the specific number we're prosecuting, almost certainly doesn't come from where people think it does. Search every Space Marine codex available, every Black Library text, every official Games Workshop publication for the Warhammer 40,000 game line, and you won't find a codex line saying a Space Marine equals 12 soldiers. The closest official statement in the available lore is an attributed quote suggesting that a single Marine is worth at least 10 under normal circumstances, with that value increasing substantially under a captain's command. 10, not 12. One source attributes the blunter version to Primarch Rogel Dorn himself. Give me 100 Space Marines, or failing that, give me 1,000 other troops. That's a 10-to-1 ratio from a Primarch, specifically framing what a Marine adds that a standard soldier fundamentally can't. The number 12 does appear in official Warhammer lore, but it's in Age of Sigmar, not Warhammer 40,000. The Stormcast Eternals, the AOS equivalent of warrior monks built from dead heroes, are officially stated to be worth 12 mortal men. That figure appears to have migrated from one game system into the other through fandom transmission, accumulated enough repetition to feel canonical, and eventually became the baseline everyone was arguing about. So the comment thread that generated 17 likes and a 4-reply debate was primarily arguing about a number that likely crossed from the wrong franchise. That said, dismissing it entirely would be intellectually dishonest, and this is a prosecution, not a dismissal. Even the at least 10 lore paraphrase gives us a real baseline. 12 is close enough to 10 that we can work with it as a rough shorthand for the freshly minted Battle Brother tier. The actual question, the one the comment section never settled, is whether that ratio holds at every rank or only at one specific point on the hierarchy before falling apart in every direction. It falls apart in every direction. But let's prove it tier by tier. The cost ledger opens before a single organ is implanted. Aspirant selection is the first line item, and it already costs lives before any surgery begins. Recruits must be adolescent males. The Lexicanum's creation of a Space Marine article confirms that implantation must begin between ages 10 and 14 and be completed by 16 to 18, because the gene seed organs require a physiology that hasn't yet finished development. The organs are keyed to male hormones and specific genetic structures. They won't take in a developed adult, and they won't take in someone biologically incompatible, no matter how willing. Before implantation starts, every candidate undergoes tissue compatibility screening and psychological testing. Most don't survive this filter. Among those who do, the trials begin. The Lexicanum describes them plainly. Some tests are to attempt to ensure the potential recruit satisfies the minimum necessary requirements, while others are a matter of preference. That second category is where chapters reveal their character. Some conduct combat challenges against existing battle brothers, testing aggression and survival instinct. Some use psychological torment. The aspirant is plunged into a trance state and subjected to visions of horror, temptation, and disorientation, with the apothecaries and chaplains watching how the psyche responds when the rational mind loses its footing. Some involve extended fasting and physical endurance beyond what a human body should survive. Some are ceremonial in ways that still kill you if you flinch. The manner in which the aspirant approaches the challenge matters as much as whether he completes it. A young man who breaks a trial with cunning rather than strength may still pass. A young man who completes the task but breaks psychologically during it may not. The assessment is holistic because the chapter isn't selecting for any single capability. It's selecting for the architecture of a warrior who can survive what comes next. And what comes next is the reason most aspirants who pass the trials still don't make it. The exact attrition rate isn't canonically fixed. Any specific percentage circulating in fandom is a community estimate, not a codex figure. But the principle is confirmed across multiple lore sources. Most aspirants die, and in the later stages, failure is almost always terminal. The gene seed rejection mechanism means the body doesn't simply fail the trial. The body catastrophically malfunctions. The implanted organs grow incorrectly, fuse where they shouldn't, or trigger immune responses that destroy the candidate from the inside. An early washout might be mind scrubbed and retained as a chapter serf. A late-stage failure doesn't have that option. The fandom wiki on Scout Marines notes that not all recruits survive their training, for no quarter can be asked or given when forging humanity's finest warriors. The Lexicanum creation of a Space Marine article confirms the same. Not all recruits survive the brutal training, of course, and not all are accepted. Chapter variation compounds this. Some chapters are documented as more selective before the trials. They recruit only the most promising warriors, keep the attrition high and the product consistent. Others throw a broader net and use the trials as the filter. A Death World chapter like the Space Wolves benefits from environmental pre-screening. Fenrisian warriors are already survivors before the chapter's scouts find them, which may concentrate useful traits before the first compatibility test runs. A Hive World chapter pulling from the Underhive gangs gets raw aggression at high volume and trusts the trials to strip out what doesn't fit. What the cost ledger records at this stage is simple. Before the first organ goes in, a substantial human population has been processed and discarded. The aspirants who died in the trials aren't counted as Space Marines. They're counted as operational overhead. The administratum probably doesn't track them at all. Now comes the gene seed, 19 organs. That's the confirmed canonical count for a standard Space Marine. 19 distinct gene seed implants, each corresponding to a specific biological upgrade, each requiring precise sequencing because they interact. The earlier organs regulate and enable the later ones. Remove or mutate one, and you don't just lose that function, you potentially cascade failures through everything that depended on it. This is why, as the Fandom Wiki Gene Seed article confirms, the removal, mutation, or failure of one organ can affect the precise functioning of the others. The implantation process runs in phases across years. The first 3 phases, secondary heart, osmodula, biscopia, can be introduced simultaneously between ages 10 and 12. Hypnotherapy begins around phase 6, between 14 and 17. The final implants arrive between 16 and 18. Even after insertion, most organs remain dormant or non-functional without ongoing chemical therapy and hypnoconditioning from the chapter's apothecaries. It isn't a surgery, it's a years-long supervised transformation, with the chapter committing institutional resources to each candidate across that entire span. The organs themselves read like a catalog of everything that makes a human body insufficient for this purpose. The secondary heart maintains circulation if the primary fails, and boosts blood flow beyond what an unaugmented human can achieve. The osmodula secretes engineered growth hormones that cause the skeleton to expand and harden. 2 years after implantation, The ribcage has fused into interlocked bone plates capable of stopping ballistic rounds. The biscopia drives muscle growth throughout the body. The Larraman's organ manufactures specialized clotting cells that reach wounds through the bloodstream and form scar tissue in seconds, which is why Space Marines can sustain injuries that would be fatal through blood loss for a normal human and keep fighting. The catalepsian node lets a Marine sleep and remain alert simultaneously by sequentially switching off sections of the brain. The record for uninterrupted active duty without rest stands at 328 hours, set by a squad of Crimson Fists during the Orc War for Rin's World. The Susan membrane enables full suspended animation, consciously triggered or automatically activated by severe trauma. Battle Brother Silas of the Dark Angels was revived after 567 years in suspension. The omophagia allows a Marine to absorb genetic memories through consuming flesh, which explains the flesh-eating and blood-drinking rituals certain chapters are known for, and which the lore treats as a functional organ capability rather than mere ceremony. The Becher's gland synthesizes and stores a contact poison in the salivary system, allowing a Space Marine to spit a blinding, corrosive acid capable of burning through metal given time. The multi-lung activates in toxic or oxygen-poor atmospheres, with a sphincter muscle isolating the normal lungs so the third lung handles respiration entirely. The neuroglottis enhances taste and smell to canine tracking levels. A Marine can follow prey by sampling the air. The mucranoid causes the Marine to secrete a waxy protein through his pores when activated by chemical therapy, sealing the skin against extreme temperatures and even providing limited protection in vacuum. Then, last, the black carapace. The Fandom Wiki's Black Carapace article describes it with appropriate gravity. A neuroreactive, black organic fibrous material implanted directly under the skin of the torso. Points are cut through the carapace using surgical tools. Over several hours, the material hardens and synthetic fiber bundles grow inward and interlink with the newly created Astartes central nervous system. Interface ports allow a Space Marine to connect his nervous system directly to his power armor's cybernetic systems, not to control the armor through physical input, but to feel it as a neural extension of himself. The armor's enhanced strength, threat sensor networks, environmental sealing, and life support functions become sensory extensions, as natural as moving an arm. The Fandom Wiki is specific about what this means in practice. A Sister of Battle in identical power armor moves with effort because her nervous system isn't wired into the suit's machine spirit. A Space Marine moves with the unconscious fluency of a human walking unencumbered because the armor and the Marine are a single neurological system. Without the black carapace, this integration is impossible. Its presence is what makes a Space Marine in power armor categorically different from an augmented human in power armor. And its absence, its deliberate absence during the scout phase, is the first place in this audit where the cost and the output diverge. When the neophyte has received most of his implants but not yet the black carapace, the chapter judges him trained but not complete. He becomes a scout. He serves in the 10th Company. He wears carapace armor rather than power armor. Lighter, quieter, less confining, and almost completely silent in operation, which the Lexicanum Scout article notes makes it an ideal form of protection for troops whose primary goal on the battlefield is to avoid detection. He fights as an infiltrator, a sniper, a skirmisher, operating independently ahead of the main force. Sergeant Tarius Tellian of the Ultramarines 10th Company gives incoming scouts their operational context in terms that function almost as a doctrine statement. Forget all your preconceptions of war, of battle lines clashing in the churned ground. Your mission is to attack before the foe even realizes that the war has begun, to strike hard at those vital weaknesses that all armies possess, but that no commander will admit to. Under my tutelage, you will learn how to seek out such fragilities and smite them with every weapon at your disposal. Master these duties, and I will have nothing more to teach, and you will truly be a Space Marine. Tellian isn't describing a frontline fighter contributing to a static line of battle. He's describing something closer to a special operations cell, an asset whose value is measured in enemy command structures disrupted, intelligence relayed ahead of the main advance, supply lines sabotaged before the battle companies make contact. Scouts reconnoiter enemy movements, set ambushes, destroy communication centers, capture commanders for interrogation, and fade before the enemy can respond. They are the forward edge of the chapter's operational picture. By the scout tier, the investment is already substantial. Most of the 19 organs are in place and maturing. Years of hypno-conditioning are embedded. The candidate's physiology already exceeds what any baseline human body produces. The enhanced senses, improved endurance, and accelerated wound response are all functional. But without the black carapace and power armor integration, a scout operates closer to an elite special forces unit than to a full battle brother. The partial investment produces a genuine capability. It doesn't yet produce the full output. Against standard Imperial Guard infantry on an infiltration mission, a scout almost certainly exceeds 12 guardsmen equivalents in the relevant mission profile. The enhanced senses, the conditioning, the biological advantages all contribute. Against a prepared defensive position with heavy weapons, the comparison becomes murkier because the scout's operational doctrine says he shouldn't be in that fight at all. He's there to make that position irrelevant before the battle companies arrive, which is the first indication that the metric might be asking the wrong question. Not every tier is trying to do the same job. Comparing them to a common baseline assumes they're substitutable. They're not. Now the audit reaches its spine. The fully implanted, fully trained, power armor integrated battle brother. The defendant in this case. The physical capabilities described in the Lexicanum's Space Marines article are sourced from codex editions rather than fan analysis, and they establish the baseline clearly. Space Marines process information within mere nanoseconds, giving them reaction capabilities that the same article describes as placing them far beyond human cognitive limits in combat. Their strength, when augmented by power armor, allows them to function as living battering rams, capable of smashing through fast-moving light vehicles or crush human heads into pulp. A fully armored Space Marine stands between 2.1 and 2.3 meters tall. The rib cage is no longer a cage, but a solid interlocked bone plate structure that stops ballistic rounds. He has a second heart. He has 3 lungs. He can spit acid. His blood clots in seconds. He doesn't need more than 4 hours of sleep and can function without any sleep for 2 weeks. The Fandom Wiki's Space Marines entry, citing Imperial lore directly. They will be untouched by plague or any natural disease and can suffer wounds that would kill a lesser being several times over and live to fight again. A commissar's observation, preserved in the Lexicanum. Space Marines are men in the same way a knife is a piece of metal. Space Marines are forged, not born. They are the finest weapons of the Emperor's will. The attributed Dorn quote, single-sourced and codex page unverified but widely cited, captures the institutional calculation bluntly. Give me 100 Space Marines, or, failing that, give me 1,000 other troops. A 10-to-1 ratio from the Primarch who designed the Imperial Fist's siege doctrines, framing the Space Marine as the efficient option over 10 times the conventional troop count. 12 men is close to that number. For a battle brother in a standard engagement against standard infantry, 12 is probably in the right range, possibly conservative given the physical parameters, but defensible as a shorthand. This is precisely where the prosecution introduces the counter-counsel with full seriousness. The commenter who said, "The Imperium kills more people just to take out the bins," was making a coherent point about the scale of Imperial expenditure. The commenter who said, "Billions in one city, life is worthless," was accurately describing a feature of the setting. These aren't bad faith arguments. They're describing the Imperium of man as it actually functions in the lore. The Imperium commands over 1 million inhabited worlds. The largest hive cities contain populations in the tens of billions. The Lexicanum Space Marines article confirms there are approximately 1,000 Space Marine chapters across the Imperium. Roughly 1 million active Space Marines total against a civilian population in the quadrillions. Some of those billion-person hive worlds field Astra Militarum regiments measured in the millions. Imperial campaigns regularly accept casualty rates that would collapse any modern nation-state. Entire regiments are expected to be consumed and replaced. Some, the Death Corps of Krieg being the most cited example, are culturally oriented around dying for their world's historical atonement. The Imperium treats human life as ammunition. From the Administratum's perspective, the biological cost of Space Marine creation, whatever it is, however many aspirants failed the trials, is a rounding error against any world's population. The prosecution accepts this argument entirely regarding human lives. Then it adds the caveat that changes the equation. Gene seed isn't treated as human lives are treated. The Codex Astartes mandated a 5% tithe of all chapter gene seed to the Adeptus Mechanicus on Mars, confirmed in the Codex Astartes Fandom Wiki article as a foundational post-heresy institutional safeguard. The Mechanicus stores, tests, and monitors this material. Chapters that fail the purity requirements face institutional consequences. The gene seed of the traitor legions was placed in stasis rather than destroyed, because even their corrupted genetic material was considered too valuable to eliminate. The Grey Knights maintain gene seed from the Emperor's own unaltered genetic code, a distinction that places their entire institutional identity in a single, irreplaceable biological archive. Chapters that suffer gene seed losses at scale face an extinction that no number of additional recruits can address, because the gene seed to convert those recruits no longer exists. Some chapters already struggle. The Fandom Wiki's gene seed article notes that many chapters now struggle to maintain a stable supply of gene seed, as genetic mutations and the loss of key organs have made it impossible for some to cultivate all 19 implants essential for Space Marine creation. A chapter that loses its entire gene seed stock doesn't rebuild, it ends. The defense's life is worthless argument is accurate about people. The Imperium demonstrates this in every war it prosecutes. But it's precisely wrong about what the Imperium actually values in the Space Marine creation process. The people are operational overhead. The gene seed is the resource the entire system is built to protect and perpetuate. The prosecution records this distinction and moves up the hierarchy. A battle brother who survives decades of warfare, demonstrates sustained tactical excellence, and accumulates both skill and institutional trust, begins climbing the veteran tier. In the Codex-compliant chapter, this journey leads eventually toward the first company, the chapter's concentration of its most experienced warriors. Veteran battle brothers who distinguish themselves in close combat may receive the additional designation of company champion, serving as the personal champion of their captain. The role is explicitly specialized, where a standard battle brother contributes to squad formations and combined arms doctrine. The company champion is optimized for single combat, trained specifically for engaging enemy commanders and champions, while the captain directs the larger engagement. The Lexicanum Space Marines article lists the company champion among the honorific duties a battle brother may hold: Honor Guard, Company Champion, or Standard Bearer. Each represents a tier of specialization within the veteran rank that standard combat experience alone doesn't produce. At the apex of veteran specialization, certain First Company warriors are awarded the right to wear tactical dreadnought armor. Terminators. This is confirmed in both Fandom Wiki and Lexicanum. Only members of the veteran First Company may wear these suits. The Fandom Wiki Terminators article describes what they represent. Terminators are Space Marine veterans who have earned the right to wear tactical dreadnought armor, better known as Terminator armor. They are their chapter's greatest infantry assets, each essentially serving as a walking tank. The path to this tier requires what the same article calls rigorous standard years of extra training beyond the already demanding Space Marine augmentation process. The suit itself demands this. A Marine doesn't simply climb into Terminator armor and fight. He spends years adapting to it. Movement in tactical dreadnought armor is accomplished through complex synthetic fiber bundle muscles, independent power supplies, integrated threat sensors, targeting cogitators, and squad-networked tactical data systems. Fighting in it effectively in a cramped corridor where its advantages are maximized requires a specific discipline that takes years to develop. The armor itself is engineering from a tradition the Imperium can no longer fully reproduce. The fandom wiki notes, not even Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Call was able to improve upon the ancient and sacred Indominus pattern Terminator armor. The most technologically sophisticated mind the Adeptus Mechanicus has produced in 10,000 years looked at this armor and found nothing to improve. New suits can be manufactured, but only at an extremely slow rate, making the suits already in circulation irreplaceable in any practical timeframe. Now consider what this tier is actually deployed to do. The Fandom Wiki Terminators article lists the canonical mission profiles. Boarding Tyranid-infested space hulks, launching teleport deep strike attacks behind enemy lines, assaulting enemy titans, spearheading actions on death worlds. Spacecraft boarding is described explicitly as the missions for which Terminator armor was made. Visualize a space hulk boarding action, because this is where the 12 men framework doesn't just produce the wrong number, it produces a number that can't exist. A space hulk is a mass of fused derelict starships, asteroids, and debris that drifts in and out of the warp. Interior atmosphere is toxic, irradiated, or absent. Corridors are measured in meters of width with bulkheads every few dozen steps. Gene stealers operate in near total darkness with physical capabilities that exceed baseline human soldiers in every relevant dimension. A guardsman in this environment has a life expectancy measured in minutes. His armor doesn't seal against vacuum. His weapons are appropriate for open terrain. His rate of fire is irrelevant when a gene stealer closes faster than he can track. Put 12 guardsmen on a space hulk and you have 12 obituaries. Put a squad of Terminators on the same hulk, deployed via teleport Homer directly into the structure, armor sealed against everything the environment produces, storm bolters laying suppressive fire at close range, power fists capable of punching through sealed bulkheads, chain fists for cutting through hull sections when doors won't open, and you have a viable operation. The Terminator isn't a more expensive solution to the same problem. The Terminator is the only solution to this class of problem. The Guardsman denominator goes to 0 before the mission starts. The ratio hasn't changed at this tier. The metric has broken entirely. The Chaplain tier is where it breaks in a different way. Every Codex-compliant Space Marine company has an attached Chaplain. The Codex Astartes is explicit about the structure. A Space Marine captain, apothecary, standard bearer, and chaplain for each company. The chaplain's role is formally defined by multiple sources as warrior priest. He maintains the chapter's spiritual health, administers rites, preserves rituals and doctrinal purity, and on the battlefield performs the litanies of hate, war chants that affect the combat performance of every Marine within earshot. That last element is the structural problem for any infantry equivalency framework. The chaplain's battlefield contribution isn't additive, it's multiplicative and distributed. One chaplain doesn't generate 12 guardsmen worth of individual combat output. One chaplain raises the effective output of every Marine he accompanies. His value is a function of the formation around him, not of his own kill count. No metric that counts individual infantry equivalents contains a variable for systemic force multiplication across an entire formation. If a battle brother is worth 12 guardsmen, and a chaplain increases the combat effectiveness of 10 battle brothers by a measurable percentage, the chaplain's contribution is spread across those 10 Marines. But the contribution itself depends on how many Marines he's with, what kind of engagement is occurring, and which psychological vulnerabilities the specific litany addresses. The number isn't 12. The number isn't stable. It's a rate applied to a variable population, and it changes every time the formation's composition changes. Beyond the battlefield multiplication, chaplains serve a genetic and cultural preservation function that directly affects chapter survival. Chapters with known genetic instabilities, the Black Rage in Blood Angel's successors, the Wolfen tendency in Space Wolves, others, rely on their chaplains and equivalent warrior priests to identify, manage, and where necessary, contain battle brothers approaching critical states. A chapter without functioning doctrinal infrastructure doesn't just fight less effectively, it risks institutional fragmentation. The chaplain is the immune system of the chapter's culture, operating alongside the apothecary's monitoring of the gene seed itself. Ask a chaplain how many guardsmen he's worth. He'll give you a litany. That's the accurate answer. The librarian is where the 12 men metric stops being merely wrong and becomes a category error with no repair. Librarians are Space Marine psychers. They have undergone the full 19 organ implantation sequence, the full combat training, the full psychological conditioning of an Astartes. And then, in addition to all of that, their psychic potential has been identified, trained under the oversight of the chapter's librarian, and weaponized at institutional level. Their operational mandate extends into domains no other rank can reach. To perceive what conventional intelligence can't detect, to strike at targets that material force alone can't address, and to banish threats that standard ammunition can't terminate. That last capability, banishment, is doing specific operational work that no other rank in the order of battle can perform. The Codex-compliant chapter maintains its librarians for functions that no other unit can replicate regardless of number. They provide psychic intelligence, direct telepathic penetration of enemy command structures that no conventional reconnaissance method can substitute for. They assist fleet navigators in particularly hostile warp passages, providing psychic stabilization where conventional navigation fails. They conduct anti-demon operations requiring psychic wards and banishment that physical force can't achieve. A greater demon isn't vulnerable to standard ammunition in the way that terminates the threat. They detect concealed psychic influence and chaos corruption that has no physical signature detectable by unaugmented humans or conventional instruments. The Imperium is a literal weapon in the librarian's hands, directed by a trained human psychic at targets that material force can't effectively address. This isn't metaphor. It's the operational distinction that makes a librarian categorically incommensurable with any quantity of conventional infantry. The Imperium itself had this argument. The Council of Nicaea, one of the major pre-heresy political events, was convened at the Emperor's direction to debate whether Space Marine librarians were too dangerous to exist within Legion formations. Every major Primarch attended or sent representation. The argument wasn't, how many soldiers is a librarian worth? The argument was, does any institution have the right to concentrate this much psychic power within the Astartes? After deliberation, the Emperor decreed the Edict of Nicaea. Librarians were to be disbanded from active service, their powers suppressed, their ranks dissolved back into the battle companies. The traitor legions ignored the edict. The traitor legions had unrestricted psyker support. The loyalist legions, operating under the edict, didn't. The Horus Heresy fiction spends considerable time examining what that asymmetry cost. The Imperium's own answer to, was the edict worth it, demonstrated by consequences rather than policy statement, appears to be no. The scale of Nicaea is the evidence. When the Emperor convenes every Primarch to debate whether a single specialist rank should be permitted to exist, the specialist rank isn't being measured in platoon equivalents. The question operating at Nicaea is existential. Can the Imperium afford the risk? Not, is this worth 12 soldiers? The 12 men question never occurred to anyone in that debate because it would have been incomprehensible. The Council of Nicaea compared librarians to civilizational stability, not to infantry. You can't send any quantity of guardsmen to banish a greater demon. The problem has no infantry solution. The librarian isn't a more expensive guardsman. He is a different category of military asset, operating in a threat domain that guardsmen can't enter. The apothecary breaks the metric from the opposite direction, where the Terminator breaks it by performing missions where the standard infantry denominator goes to 0, and where the chaplain and librarian break it by systemic multiplication or categorical incommensurability. The apothecary breaks it from the production side, not what comes out, but what his function makes possible in the future. Every space marine carries 2 progenoid glands, one in the neck, one in the chest cavity. The Fandom Wiki Gene Seed article confirms these mature over 5 and 10 years respectively and contain the chapter's gene seed material. Extracted by an apothecary using the narthecium and its reductor attachment, these glands can be cultured into the full suite of 19 gene seed organs required to transform another human into another space marine. The apothecary's priority protocol in battle is explicit. The Fandom Wiki apothecary article states that, without the gene seed, the chapter would be unable to create new space marines. The genetic information it carries is the crucial component in the transformation of a mere human into a transhuman space marine. Bereft of this vital biocomponent, the chapter would wither and die within a generation, its losses irreplaceable. The Lexicanum's apothecary article records the medic credo: "Don't fail your brothers. Though their bodies die, their spirit must return to the chapter. That is your charge. The life ends. The gene seed comes home." Master of the Apothecarian, Aslan Mar, articulates the priority sequence more completely, as quoted in the Lexicanum. "He that may fight, heal him. He that may fight no more, give him peace. He that is dead, take from him the chapter's due. While his genoseed returns to the chapter, a space marine can't die. Without death, pain loses its relevance." The grammar of that protocol deserves close attention. Fighting comes first, then mercy, then gene seed recovery. The gene seed is the chapter's due, an institutional obligation framed in language that makes it more important than the individual marine's survival. When a tyrannid swarm threatens to consume fallen battle brothers entirely, apothecaries are documented as fighting through hordes to reach the dead and recover gene seed before the hive mind absorbs it. In cases where extraction is impossible, the apothecary destroys the gene seed rather than allow enemy capture. In the most extreme cases, an apothecary carrying already extracted gene seed in his narthecium will destroy himself rather than surrender that material. The strategic mathematics are unusual enough to be worth stating plainly. An apothecary who recovers the progenoid glands from 5 fallen battle brothers during a campaign hasn't contributed 5 times 12 guardsmen worth of combat output. He has enabled somewhere between 5 and 10 future space marines to exist, the exact number depending on gland maturity and viability. His value is measured in generations rather than battles, compounding across decades of chapter history. The Lexicanum confirms that maintaining 1 apothecary per approximately 100 battle brothers, representing about 1% of chapter strength, is treated as the minimum necessary investment for sustainable gene seed management. No metric that counts bodies in a single engagement captures a function that operates at that timescale. Before the apex of the audit, the most liked lore correction comment deserves its full due. 20 likes, the highest engaged lore response in the thread. The argument: any universal claim about Space Marine cost is wrong because recruitment varies dramatically by chapter. The specific examples used were the Salamanders, White Scars, and Space Wolves. The comment was correct. White Scars recruit almost exclusively from their homeworld Chagoris, what they call mundus planus. The Lexicanum describes them as a highly cultured chapter, with poetry among their most respected and ancient traditions, with each company historically maintaining its own rituals and cultural identity derived from Chagorian tribal life. The chapter's martial identity maps naturally onto the nomadic warrior traditions of Chagoris. Recruits drawn from these traditions don't require total cultural reconstruction to become White Scars. The values of mobile warfare, personal honor, and the collective life of a warrior brotherhood already exist in the culture the chapter draws from. The psychological cost of the transformation is lower when the recruit's existing identity can be developed rather than erased. Salamanders begin recruitment at ages 6 and 7 on Nocturne, confirmed in the Fandom Wiki Salamanders entry as notably younger than most other chapters. More unusually, they maintain what the research describes as tribal elder-style links with families on Nocturne after transformation. The Salamanders are among the only confirmed chapters to retain any familial connection post-induction. The Lexicanum Salamander's gene seed entry confirms the cultural consequence. Their noted protectiveness of civilian life traces directly to the fact that salamanders have maintained a lived connection to it. A salamander isn't created by severing his ties to humanity and replacing that identity wholesale. His human connection is preserved and becomes part of what motivates him. The production model differs, the cost differs, the output differs. Space wolves recruit from Fenris, a confirmed death world. Environmental selection pre-screens candidates before the chapter's scouts find them. A Fenrisian warrior who reaches recruiting age has already survived conditions that kill most humans without any chapter intervention. But the Space Wolves carry a complication that adds a unique failure mode cost. The Canis helix, a phase 0 element of their gene seed process, creates the risk of wolfen transformation, uncontrolled bestial mutation that can manifest in any space wolf at any point in his service life. Higher baseline aspirant quality from environmental selection. Additional gene seed instability cost that no other chapter carries in exactly this form. The arithmetic is different again. The top comment's point lands. There is no universal Space Marine cost figure. Any claim of universality fails on Nocturne at age 6, on Chagoris at age 12, and on Fenris whenever the Canis helix decides it's had enough. Now the apex. A chapter master commands 1,000 transhuman battle brothers. The Fandom Wiki chapter master entry captures the scope. He holds dominion over 1,000 transhuman battle brothers, willing to fight and die for him at his merest whim and without question. In addition, he holds sway over vast martial and civil resources, including battle barges, strike cruisers, armories filled with the most advanced weaponry of the Imperium, planetary defense forces, astropaths, and navigators. The Lexicanum Chapter Master article confirms that he often acts as governor of his chapter's homeworld and has overall command of immense battle fleets, PDF units, and civilian organizations, making him a peer of the Imperium in political terms, answerable only to other chapter masters and the Emperor's representatives. The sectors of space controlled by Astartes chapters benefit from the chapter master's political patronage and strategic assessment. He is simultaneously a military commander, a political authority, and the living embodiment of an institution that has sustained itself across centuries or millennia of continuous warfare. One chapter master's decision illustrates what authority at this tier actually costs and produces. When 15 Space Marine task forces failed to stop a Necron vessel known as the World Engine, a construct so powerful that conventional weapons had no effect, Chapter Master Artor Amrad of the Astral Knights made a calculation. He directed his chapter's battle barge directly into the World Engine's void shields as a kinetic projectile. In the moments before impact, the entire chapter deployed in drop pods. For over 100 hours, 772 battle brothers fought against Necron warriors numbering in the tens of thousands inside the World Engine structures. The Astral Knights fought until they couldn't. Amrad and 5 surviving battle brothers were the last. He detonated melta-charges that destroyed the command arrays. The void shields failed, and the Imperial Navy's warships finished the vessel with cyclonic torpedoes. 772 Arblestone statues now stand silent vigil in the remains of the battle barge Tempestus in the dead heart of the Denora system. One for each fallen Astral Knight. The chapter is gone. The world engine is gone. Amrad made the calculation that one was worth the other, and he had the authority to make it. No accumulation of standard soldiers produces that capability, because capability at this tier isn't firepower. It's the authority to make irreversible strategic decisions at civilizational scale, backed by centuries of experience and the political standing to execute them. Measuring a chapter master in guardsman equivalents is like asking how many rifles equal a nuclear deterrent. The units don't convert. The question is malformed by construction. Here's what the audit actually found. The 12 men figure is defensible at exactly 1 tier on the hierarchy. The freshly minted battle brother, black carapace, newly integrated, fursuit of power armor fitted, no specialist designation, no accumulated decades of tactical experience, no command authority. The most expensive baseline soldier in human history, built from years of surgical investment, years of psychological conditioning, a population of aspirants who didn't survive the trials, and gene seed whose 2 progenoid glands required 5 years and 10 years respectively to mature, measured against 12 standard Imperial guardsmen with laser guns. At that single point, 12 is defensible, probably conservative given the physical parameters described in official lore, but within the range. At every tier above that point, the ratio changes so dramatically that the original figure loses all descriptive power. Terminators perform missions where the guardsman denominator goes to 0 before the operation begins, because the environment kills unprotected humans before they can engage. Chaplains produce a multiplicative output distributed across a variable formation, generating a number that depends entirely on how many Marines they're accompanying and what psychological vulnerabilities the specific litany addresses. Librarians operate in a capability domain, psychic warfare, demon banishment, warp navigation support, telepathic intelligence, where infantry equivalents have no meaning because the capabilities exist in a dimension infantry can't enter. Apothecaries generate value measured in future generations of Space Marines rather than kills per engagement. Chapter Masters wield authority over sectors of space, fleet assets, and political relationships that have no infantry equivalence framework at any ratio. And the original number probably came from Age of Sigmar. The commenter who said, "You wouldn't do all that work and kill all those people for only 12 men," was right. But about every tier above Battle Brother, where the output dwarfs the comparison and eventually becomes incommensurable with it. The commenter who said, "The Imperium kills more people just to take out the bins," was right, but only about human lives, not about gene seed, which the Imperium tracks, tithes, and treats with institutional reverence it never shows to human bodies. Both sides were arguing about an incomplete number applied universally to a hierarchy where no universal number exists. The original claim was stated without a rank qualifier. The Imperium doesn't have one answer to, "Is a Space Marine worth it?" It has a different answer at every tier, in every chapter, against every threat profile, across every century of accumulated gene seed and campaign history. The answers range from defensible at baseline to the question has no unit. Most of those answers are yes. All of them are horrifying. That's the verdict. Subscribe for more stories like this.